Hi, I'm Tamara, and today is class 4 of 5 classes on learning how to sew. So if you missed any of the previous classes, definitely check the description down below and I will have them all listed down there for you. Now, let's jump into today's lesson, which is all about troubleshooting your sewing machine when it's causing you grief. It's not working properly. Things are frustrating you. Let's go through a whole list of things that you can do to see if we can solve your problem for you. Often, when we have sewing machine issues, our first thought is to go, it's tension. It's the tension problem. I've got to solve the tension. No, we don't go to tension first. So I'm going to walk you through a bunch of other things that we can do first to try to solve your problem before we start fiddling with our tension. Now, the first thing let's look at is our needle. Is it blunt? Is it bent? Is it broken? Is it not inserted into the machine correctly? Have a look at all of these things. If somehow your sewing machine needle, just the little end broke off, that could have fallen into your sewing machine, and now we need to go look for that piece. Next, think. Are you using the correct fabric and the correct thread with the correct needle? Because that will cause us grief. So in my sewing guide for beginners, which I do have linked in the description down below, I actually have a chart where it goes through all the different sewing machine needles that there are and what types of fabric and what types of thread it works with best. So you can definitely check that out and see if that's something that you're interested in. The next thing that often gives us grief is our thread itself. So have a look at our thread. Is it old thread? Is it cheap thread? Because that type of thread does not go through a sewing machine well. It will break, it will tangle, it will frustrate. So make sure that you are using a quality thread. I like to use Gutermann all-purpose thread for a lot of my beginner sewing tutorials. Make sure that you've re-threaded your sewing machine. So if the thread is giving you grief, or maybe you don't even know what exactly is causing the grief, re-thread your sewing machine. And then have a look at your bobbin. Is your bobbin wound properly? Is the thread too loose on that bobbin? If the thread is too loose on the bobbin, it will cause you issues. It will start to bird nest up right above the bobbin and kind of underneath your fabric. Does your bobbin have a bit of a burr on it? Sometimes that can happen. So have a look at your bobbin and make sure it's smooth around those outer edges. Has the bobbin been overfilled? If the bobbin's been overfilled, it will actually cause frustration to your sewing machine. And finally, make sure that the bobbin is installed correctly. So most machines will say that your bobbin should actually rotate counterclockwise. So have a look at that bobbin and make sure that you've installed that bobbin correctly. The next thing that you can do, since we're having a look at where our bobbin is actually have a look around that bobbin area. Often we don't clean out our sewing machines enough, so it can cause our sewing machine to jam up or cause noises that we're not used to hearing. So your sewing machine should come with a tiny little brush. Grab that little brush and start sweeping away at all of the excess lint that is in your sewing machine, because that can be causing you problems as well. Another thing, if you're dealing with noises or jamming, your sewing machine may need to be oiled. So have a look at your manual again, find out what the maintenance is for your sewing machine and what oil you're supposed to be using, as well as where it should go. Definitely follow the manual for your sewing machine in regards to this. Next, are you having trouble with the fabric feeding through the sewing machine properly? If you are, of course, make sure that presser foot is down on top of that fabric, because it won't work if the presser foot is sitting up. If you're working with an older sewing machine, the hand wheel often has a little part on the inside that you pop out when you want to fill your bobbin on the top. Make sure that that piece is popped back in before you start sewing, otherwise your sewing machine will not engage. And of course, make sure that those feed dogs are in the up position. Sometimes they get put down for free motion quilting, or maybe, you know, you had a kid in your sewing room or having a look at that sewing machine and they just flicked a switch and your feed dogs are down. So make sure that those feed dogs are in the up position, because without those feed dogs, your fabric is not going anywhere. And then finally, that can bring us to maybe fiddling with the tension, unless you're getting some error codes. I'll move on to error codes after I talk about tension. But if you've done everything else and you're not dealing with error codes, then have a look at your sewing machine, and now we will look at tension. So have a look at your thread. Now, as the thread is moving through the fabric, are you seeing the bobbin thread popping up on the top of your fabric? If you are, then slowly adjust your tension lower. If you're seeing that thread actually coming through and showing on the bottom of your fabric, then you need to adjust your tension higher. Now, there is something to note. There's more than one tension on your sewing machine. So I'm talking about your normal tension wheel. However, there's actually tension that you can adjust on your presser foot itself, as well as tension you can adjust on your bobbin. This is not something I've ever done or needed to do. So it's just something that I just want you to be aware of. And finally, is your sewing machine giving you error codes? Of course, these error codes will only happen with sewing machines that have a bit of a computerized component to your sewing machine. But if it's giving you error codes, definitely do the IT guy thing, which is to turn that sewing machine off and then turn it back on again. Sometimes it is as simple as that. Have a look at your sewing machine manual. It will often give you the error codes and tell you why these error codes are occurring. I have had it before where I was sewing and my needle came down onto my presser foot because I was using the wrong settings. And because of that, the computer component froze up and panicked. So I took my sewing machine foot off so it was out of the way. And I tried the on-off button and that did not solve anything. But what I did end up figuring out was if I pushed the needle down button and then the needle back up button, it reset itself and then my sewing machine was able to work. So if you're dealing with error codes and you're dealing with more of the computerized components, try all your buttons. You never know what button is going to solve your problem. So sometimes it's as simple as that on-off switch, and other times it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So have a look around your sewing machine, have a look at that manual, and see if you can resolve this yourself. If you can't, I do have a book that I'd like to recommend for you, which I am also going to link in the description down below. This book is called The Sewing Machine Reference Tool. And it is a good book that will walk you through a whole bunch of ways that you can troubleshoot your sewing machine before running to a technician. If you do need to find a technician and you have no clue where to start, I would suggest calling your local town sewing machine retailer, as they often will either be the person who fixes the sewing machine, or they have someone on staff, or they know someone that they can refer you to so that you can call someone and have that sewing machine repaired for you. And of course, I do want to mention, if you have any other ideas that you're like, no, wait, she didn't talk about this or she didn't mention this, and that worked for me, please leave them in the comments down below, because we all end up with sewing machine problems. We're all working with different sewing machines, and so our solutions may vary. All right, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.